The tale of SCP-8360 weaved itself through the arteries of a world unseen by most. It was a ghost story whispered in the wind, a legend that danced on the tongues of the old and wise, an enigma that haunted the dreams of Mesoamerican occultists. It was a tale of power, of betrayal, of darkness, and the struggle within. It was a dance with the supernatural, a battle against the inevitable, a struggle between the man and the monstrous beast within. At its core, SCP-8360 was a mysterious culture-bound phenomenon, deeply rooted in the rich and diverse soils of Mesoamerica. It marked select individuals with the potent gift or curse of therianthropy. Their bodies became fluid canvases upon which the shapes of beasts were sketched. Yet, this wasn't the product of idle fancy or mere superstition. It was real, palpable. It was thaumaturgy of the highest order, a testament to the arcane powers that humankind had merely begun to tap into. The phenomenon stretched its tendrils across history and cultures. It was observed in the enigmatic Olmec, the industrious Toltec, the sophisticated Nahua, the legendary Maya, and even in the foreign cadences of Hispanic lore. However, the exact conditions that led to the manifestation of SCP-8360 remained as elusive as the shadows in moonlight. Speculation leaned towards genetics, yet the empirical evidence was as murky as the waters of a storm-ravaged sea. It was suspected that close to 0.1% of the Mexican population were active possessors of this ability, their bodies playing host to the beast within. Yet there were others, possibly up to 2% of the population, who were considered to be dormant carriers, the potential for the transformation lying latent within their genetic code. The containment of SCP-8360 was a complicated, tangled web of ethical dilemmas and practical impossibilities. The challenge presented itself as an ongoing battle against unseeable forces, a struggle that defied boundaries, and a terror that lurked in the underbelly of society. The Mexican drug war had become a battlefield for this supernatural phenomenon, providing a grim backdrop to an even grimmer reality. Entangled in the war were not only the law enforcement agencies and military, but also various anomalous organizations such as the Foundation, the Unidentified Incidents Unit, UIU, Anti-Drug Enforcement Agency, ADEA, Criminal Paranormal Investigation Agency, CPIA, and Pentagram. Private contractors such as the Valravn Corporation were also drawn into the fray, their motivations hidden behind a veil of plausible deniability. Notorious criminal organizations and extremist groups like the Sin Nombre Drug Cartel, Cartel de Puebla, Los Ocultos Gang, and the radical left-wing group Las Víboras quietly wielded SCP-8360 as a weapon in their arsenal. Hard containment strategies were implemented, and in some dire cases, neutralization was deemed necessary. SCP-8360 was resilient, almost impervious to conventional weaponry. Still, they showed a surprising vulnerability to high-voltage electrical shock, a chink in their armor that proved beneficial in non-lethal containment scenarios. An early hypothesis, proposing the necessity of an animal-themed mask for transformation, was debunked. In its wake, new containment protocols were necessitated. Beryllium bronze handcuffs proved effective in preventing transformations. Traditional wards against SCP-8360 were analyzed, their effectiveness tested. Elaborate seals depicting Saint Benedict of Nursia and the Hand of Fatima, consecrated salts, aromatic herbs, all tools of an age-old wisdom, now brought to the fore against a threat most modern. Beneath the starlight-flecked canopy of the night, nestled in the heart of the Central American territories, secret societies of humans lived in symbiosis with the wilderness. This clandestine partnership, rooted in ancient Mesoamerican culture, had filtered its way into immigrant communities in the United States. It was a lineage, a spiritual connection woven into the very fabric of their existence. This bond, known as tonali or tonali, was the central tenet of the SCP-8360 phenomenon. This belief, deeply etched in the psyche of the indigenous Mesoamerican cultures, decreed that upon their birth, each human being was bound to an animal spirit. The tethering was no mere symbolism. It was a marriage of souls, of existence, a tether that could be nourished through thaumaturgical means until a synthesis and symbiosis was achieved between the human vessel and the tethered beast. The SCP-8360 entities, through centuries of nurturing this delicate link, were able to blur the lines between human and beast. Their transformations were fluid, ranging from partial alterations that muddled their humanoid form to complete metamorphoses into the bound animal entity. And these were no mere disguises. The subjects demonstrated physical abilities exceeding both human and non-anomalous animal norms. truly embodying the apex predators that lay dormant within them. The masks were an integral part of their rupturing reality, each corresponding to the tonal animal of the SCP-8360 subject. The masks varied in their craft. Some were mere pieces of crafted wood, others mass-produced latex depictions, and while no thaumaturgical properties were discovered in their analysis, their role could not be diminished. They were not means to an end, but rather aids, tools to channel the thaumaturgical energies igniting the metamorphosis, a ritualistic focus for the transmogrification process. But the harmony of their clandestine existence had been ruptured. Incidents at the US-Mexico border had resulted in the death of 5 Border Patrol members, inflaming the simmering diplomatic relations between the two nations. Further exacerbating the crisis was a grisly discovery at an abandoned farm in Las Cruces, Guerrero. A mass grave, a grim testament to the uncontrolled repercussions of SCP-8360. Paraforensic analysis confirmed that a majority of the 156 bodies recovered were SCP-8360 entities, a tragic testament to the failure of their containment efforts. In the midst of this grim tableau, one man, POI 8877, cast a solitary figure. Detained by Calmacac security forces for trespassing into the Las Cruces crime scene, he was handed over to the Foundation's custody. A bear of a man, his broad shoulders slumped under the weight of his chains, his face hidden beneath a canopy of unkempt hair. They said he had resisted arrest, morphing into his apex predator form to ward off his captors. Even as he sat across from Agent Gerardo Oka, his spirit embattled, his demeanor told a different story. "Are you the good cop?" he asked, his voice barely audible under the weight of his despair. "I'm not a cop," Oka had responded, "but I am here to help you." His response was laced with skepticism, his trust replaced by an instinctual wariness. "You mean you're the good jailer?" "I'm not here to imprison you," Oka assured him as the air between them turned ice cold. "I'm here to understand you." "Understand?" POI 8877 barked a hollow laugh, his eyes finally meeting Oka's. "You can never understand. I only meant to scare them." As the interrogating agent, Oka, sat across from POI 8877, he took note of the subject's battle-worn demeanor. The prisoner had been through a lot, his face a testament to his trials, a mosaic of bruises, a darkened eye, and a gash on his upper lip that made every spoken word a painful endeavor. Discomfort rippled through Oka, his empathetic instinct kicking in. "You seem to have had a rough go," Agent Oka murmured with a measure of reluctance. A low, tired chuckle rumbled from POI 8877 as he glanced up at his captor. There was no trace of hostility in his gaze, only resigned defiance. "Your comrades certainly know how to throw a party," he retorted, the edge of his voice blunted by fatigue. A pang of guilt hit Oka. The man across from him wasn't just a tool to extract information, but a living, breathing entity, capable of suffering. "I apologize. Let's find a way to make this right." POI 8877 sighed, a sound heavy with weariness. "And how would you intend to do that?" Oka leaned back, considering the man more intently. He wasn't a sin nombre, a faceless enemy. He was human, a potential ally, if only the right approach could be found. "By showing you're not our enemy. We'd rather cooperate with peaceful SCPs, Nahuales, than lock them away." The prisoner's eyes flickered with interest. "All right then, let's have this conversation comfortably." He jangled his handcuffs, his wrists chafed and raw. "Do these really have to stay?" Oka locked eyes with him. An undercurrent of remorse ran through his gaze. "I'm afraid they must." POI 8877 tilted his head, indicating the cruel shock collar around his neck. "And this?" he asked, his voice a strain. "Negative," Oka responded, his tone heavy with regret. "And what about this San Benito medallion?" the captive queried. You can be relieved of the San Benito," Oka replied, reaching over to unhook the suppressive talisman from around the prisoner's neck. POI 8877 stretched his neck, a sigh of relief escaping his bruised lips as he mumbled, "Much better." Now the most crucial question hung in the air between them. "Who are you?" Oka pressed. "My name is Uriel Castillo Ba," he responded, his voice finally regaining some strength. Oka processed the information, the mention of the infamous clan Ba intriguing him. The simple exchange of names felt like an unspoken agreement. They were no longer just interrogator and prisoner, but two individuals with shared concerns. Uriel's involvement in the incident, his motivation for breaking into what the agency had officially declared a crime scene, was Oka's next puzzle piece. Uriel's violent response to the label gave Oka chills. Crime scene? That was nothing short of an extermination camp. The agent maintained his calm. Regardless, why were you there? Uriel looked straight into Oka's eyes, something akin to desperation seeping into his hardened gaze. I was looking for my brother, Abdiel Castillo-Ba. We lost contact months ago, and with abductions on the rise, my family grew worried. Oka felt a spark of hope. Uriel's admission confirmed what the Foundation had already suspected. Uriel's relentless search had led him here, to the Foundation, and, unknowingly, to his brother. Uriel, your brother is alive, Oka declared, the relief in his voice unmistakable. A flicker of hope ignited in Uriel's eyes. Are you certain? Where is he? Oka moved, opening a briefcase to reveal a folder with Abdiel's name, his brother's face staring back at Uriel. Abdiel was arrested after an altercation with Valravan security contractors. He's safe and under the Foundation's protection now. Uriel implored, his gaze pleading. Can I see him? In time, Uriel. We still have some details to confirm, but you'll see him soon, Oka assured. Offering a simple, heartfelt thank you, Uriel agreed to cooperate further, giving some crucial insights into Sin Nombre's operations. Uriel's previous encounters with mass graves across the country made for an unsettling narrative. His description of Las Cruces in particular held clues to Sin Nombre's desperation. Oka tried to piece together the implications of Uriel's words. Despite the absence of training camps, weapon storage, and masks, Uriel's insight suggested a terrifying possibility, a sinister evolution within the ranks of the Sin Nombre. Uriel's cryptic metaphor of masks being training wheels, a safeguard for those not ready to take a hit, sent a chill down Oka's spine. A war was coming, and it was going to be bloody. Silence stretched the air taut in the dimly lit room, a palpable tension tangling around the stark reality they were discussing. POI 8877 finally broke the silence, his words heavy with a foreboding that seeped into the room's atmosphere like a toxic fog. This isn't a training camp. It's something else. Our elders knew. They sensed it, warned me that some major event was unfolding. Agent Oka blinked across from him, her eyes reflecting a mix of skepticism and curiosity. Something major, you say? Would this have any connection to the corpses of the Americans? A dry, humorless chuckle echoed from POI 8877, his face tightening into a grimace. And here lies the crux of why I can't trust you entirely, jailer. Thousands of mass graves, laden with Mexican skeletons, could be unearthed, and not a soul would blink. Yet, a single gringo falls, and suddenly it's a matter of concern. Oka leaned back in her chair, her gaze steady on POI 8877. It's not that simple. We are trying to prevent an international incident. POI 8877 shrugged dismissively. I know nothing about those dead gringos. I don't care. The events unfolding are far bigger than some dead Americans. My grandmother spoke of a black rider, a harbinger of destruction, leaving only scorched earth in his wake. But what truly disturbed her was the scent of the ashes left behind. I didn't understand her meaning until I visited Las Cruces. You smelled it too, didn't you? El Charro Negro. Oka frowned, her eyes clouded with confusion. I'm not sure I follow. We did find some effigies and an altar, of course, but that isn't unusual. No, POI 8877 said, breathing in deeply, then exhaling slowly. It wasn't the effigies, the decay in that place. It was more than just the stench of death. The whole place. It reeked of emptiness. In the aftermath of their conversation, subsequent tests conducted by Satmex 11 unveiled startlingly high Akiva energy readings from the Las Cruces crime scene. At a subsequent high-profile meeting, General Pete Wilson painted a grim picture. We're talking about millions of potential SCP-8360 instances, increasing on a daily basis. This dormant threat could detonate violently if not addressed. These aren't ordinary criminals. They're bloodthirsty monsters, barely even human anymore. The severity of the situation necessitated an escalation in containment measures. The Foundation pledged to back Comicac's initiative to intensify containment of SCP-8360. Furthermore, both the Zenith Group and the Global Occult Coalition concurred on financially bolstering the Mexican government in developing 13 Zonas de Seguridad y Bienestar across Mexico to house SCP-8360 instances. The Zenith Group also agreed to mass-produce beryllium bronze handcuffs and other associated containment equipment, along with state-of-the-art genetic analysis technologies to pinpoint dormant instances of SCP-8360. The recent surge in violent incidents involving SCP-8360 at the U.S.-Mexico border prompted discussions between Pentagram and Comicac. Given historical precedents, COMICAC proposed to strategically integrate SCP-8360 into the Mexican Armed Forces as a valuable resource to counteract paracriminal activities. Concurrently, Pentagram and other U.S. parasecurity agencies vowed to reinforce border security and deport SCP-8360 criminals to COMICAC authorities. Historical records confirm that SCP-8360 had been utilized in warfare by the ancient Mexica Empire, a testament to their military significance that echoed through the ages. The highest echelons of the Cuauhtémoc Special Forces had always been reserved for those imbued with the enigmatic abilities of SCP-8360. These chosen few were a counterpoint to the conquistadors, their mystical powers, a disconcerting match against the colonists' advanced weaponry. With the reluctant alliance between Tlaxcala and Spain, war was waged, with SCP-8360 instances battling along with the indigenous auxiliary troops under the Spanish banner. Yet even as the Mexica Empire fell, the uneasy alliance between the Spanish-aligned SCP-8360 instances and the colonial ecclesiastical authorities began to crack. The fervent evangelization campaigns of New Spain deemed SCP-8360 as the embodiment of pagan heresy, a curse steeped in old-world superstitions. However, in the face of necessity, the colonial authorities could not ignore the value of SCP-8360 in suppressing indigenous insurgencies, leading to its clandestine use. Legal loopholes were exploited with finesse, balancing the edge of the sword between military needs and religious mandates. A group, ominously referred to as La Compañía de Cuervos, had taken the mantle of training loyalist SCP-8360 instances, transforming them into efficient hunters to neutralize their rebellious counterparts. The responsibility of extinguishing the last vestiges of the Cuauhtémoc SCP-8360 cells during the late 16th century rested on their shoulders. However, as the colonial period was drawing to its close, the practice of SCP-8360 was suppressed in urban centers. It faded into obscurity, relegated to isolated communities and whispered legends of secret Nahual societies conspiring against the omnipresent church and crown. These rumors were investigated by the Santo Oficio and Buscadores de Dios authorities, but to no avail. The revolutionary period witnessed a resurgence of SCP-8360 instances among Zapatista and Villista forces, a quiet echo of the past that refused to die. However, the post-revolutionary Mexico was a hostile environment for SCP-8360, as the government and reactionary groups sought to extinguish its existence. General Montoya mused over this in his private quarters one night, his gaze fixated on a scarred corner of his mahogany desk. The illumination from the solitary lamp threw inconsistent shadows around him, mirroring his mental turmoil. He could see the patterns drawn out through national military history, the indomitable force of Nahualism serving as a counterbalance against technological and tactical disparities. His mind was fraught with conflicting emotions as he grappled with the realization that the integration of Nahualism into their national anomalous military doctrine was essential. Their foreign allies and private contractors were a temporary solution, ill-equipped to safeguard their sovereignty in the long term. Yet, these were more than musings. They were carefully considered plans, as reflected in COMICAC Disposition 337. The practice of SCP-8360-related thaumaturgy was now a national security matter, exclusive to the Mexican Armed Forces and its affiliated organizations. Thus, the old ways were slated to be reborn, under the watchful eyes of the military and cloaked in the secrecy of the nation. The compliance deadline weighed heavily on the SCP-8360 instances, the civilian population now categorized as Nahualis. By May 23, 2025, they were to report to COMICAC, surrender, and register themselves lest they face dire consequences. The shadow of suspicion loomed over the unconfirmed as well, ready to expose them to genetic scrutiny at COMICAC's discretion. Yet amidst this sea of turmoil, those without major criminal records or crime syndicate affiliations were presented with a choice: to volunteer their service in the reserve battalions of the 4th Anomalous Combat Section of the National Guard, or be relocated to the looming Zona de Seguridad y Bienestar. General Montoya, a stern figure burdened with the weight of his duties, found himself in a labyrinth of challenges. Identifying Nahuales amongst the sea of civilians to quarantine them was a task laden with difficulties. The controversy of mass hard containment echoed, its resonance shaking the very foundation of humanity. To counter this, Montoya and his team relied on a series of circumstantial indicators, gang-related tattoos, immigrant background, indigenous ancestry, unusual animal masks, suspicious religious affiliations, practices, even hushed accusations from fellow community members. Regardless of the controversy, Montoya stood staunchly by these determinants, considering them reliable predictors of criminal Nahualism. The impending advent of widespread genetic testing, courtesy of the Zenith Group, was a beacon of hope for them. The initial step was to confirm suspected cases of criminal Nahualism amidst high-risk profiles. The Central American migrant caravans, as per Pentagram's directive, were given particular attention. Eventually, the mass testing would be extended to the general population, aiming to identify any hidden Nahuales, a precautionary measure for their safety and the nation's security. In the addendum labeled as F, Norberto Goicoechea, chairman of Valravenzots, reflected on their history of service to the Mexican nation. As a transnational entity, they had always respected Mexican sovereignty despite the challenges it presented. But now, as Valravenzots transformed into a fully Mexican-owned subsidiary of Valraven International, Goicoechea saw an opportunity for change. With state-of-the-art security and research services ready to fortify the Zonas de Seguridad y Bienestar, they planned to facilitate the management of SCP-8360 and its integration into Kalmakak's forces. With the rise of Kamazots, the Bat, intertwined with Valraven, a new era was heralded, an era where the Bat would hunt down the nation's enemies. In Addendum G, POI 8877, Uriel found himself in the unsettling presence of Agent Oka for a second interview. The tension was palpable as they sat across the interrogation table. The words hung heavily in the air as Uriel revealed details about El Charro Negro, el patrón más allá del tiempo, the revered patron saint of Sin Nombre. Unlike the Pale Lady, who had been discarded in his favor, El Charro Negro didn't demand mercy. The shift in Sin Nombre's para-religious practices had not gone unnoticed, but Oka struggled to decipher its implications. The intricate web of mystery continued to unravel, bringing forth more questions than answers. The menacing air in the room thickened with the agent's words, pulsating with a heightened sense of brutality that was escalating. The Pale Lady, once a benign presence, had now grown more ominous, yet it was the enigma of the nebulous Charro Negro that perplexed them even more. A question hung heavily between them. Do you believe it's real? Uriel, designated as POI 8877, reclined in the dimly lit room, his face shrouded in shadows. He painted an eerie picture, reciting a tale that his grandfather had once told him in the darkness of a moonless night. He spoke of blistering cold, of despair, and of the fearsome mounted figure that emerged from the unfathomable void of darkness. The figure, an embodiment of infernal heat and an omnipresent stench of sulfur, had the unsettling grace of a predator on the prowl. He told of the figure's chilling red eyes that gleamed with an unholy, blistering glow. Uriel's voice lowered to a tense whisper, imitating the figure's silent but resonating proposition. Plata o plomo. Agent Oka jerked from his contemplative stupor. A practical man, he didn't have the luxury to indulge in ghost stories, no matter how compelling. What was your point, Uriel? He questioned, his tone clipped and formal. His point, Uriel deduced, was the significance of such tales. The legends that had been passed on to him were not mere pieces of fiction, but were masks, disguising far more profound truths. When asked to clarify, he maintained that the mysterious Charro Negro, real or not, was analogous to a mask. A mask? Like a disguise? For what? Oka queried, the beginnings of curiosity tugging at the corner of his mind. Uriel's response was cryptic yet insightful. He suggested that a mask was not always a disguise. It could serve as a conduit, a bridge to something far more potent. He cited the example of his clan's tradition of Nahualismo, a skill they had inherited from the gods. Despite Oka's impatience, he couldn't ignore the subtle thread of intrigue that Uriel's words wove. Oka, caught in the web of Uriel's tales, found himself doubting the black-and-white threshold between the real and the mythical. His skepticism about the existence of divine entities momentarily faltered when Uriel suggested that El Charro Negro was a conduit for the entity referred to as the Black Moon. Uriel sighed, exhaustion creeping into his voice. Still, he persisted, unfolding the legend of a heavenly war, the celestial battle that led to the restriction of true power. His words held a note of longing for an era when their ancient powers were unbound and free. Exasperated, Oka demanded that Uriel get to the point. Sensing the agent's impatience, Uriel snapped, his tone escalating as he expressed his frustration at being held captive for 2 weeks without any news of his brother. Oka's face fell, his gaze skidding away from Uriel's accusing stare. Apologizing for the change in circumstances and the consequent delay, he tried to explain that the situation was volatile, that even they were grappling to navigate through the uncertainty. Uriel's sharp laugh cut through the tense atmosphere, a bitter realization dawning upon him. He voiced his regret at ever having trusted his captors, chastising them for their language of cages and violence. His resentment hung heavy in the air, adding another layer to the already loaded chambers of their narrative. A thick air of accusation and desperation hung over the room as an animated exchange erupted between the two men. "So it's mass incarceration first. Ask questions later now. Is that it?" POI 8877 accused bitterly, the words dripping with a venomous mixture of fear and defiance. Agent Oka, taken aback, blinked in surprise. "Excuse me?" Thechulel, POI 8877 continued, ignoring the agent's confusion. "We have lived freely for centuries, and now you people want to reduce us to a band of enslaved soldiers." "Who's feeding you these lies?" Agent Oka questioned, his brow furrowed. POI 8877 laughed dryly. "Oh, the rumors are rife. Tell me, do I look like I'm lying?" "Conscription to Comicac," Agent Oka clarified, "is completely voluntary." "Or imprisonment," POI 8877 retorted, voice resonating with undisguised scorn. "Guilty until proven submissive. Sounds awfully like El Salvador's playbook to me. And what about the deported from the States? All illegals? All Mexicans? All Nahuales?" "This," Agent Oka began, his voice steady and measured, "is for the security of both the general public and SCP-8360. "Bullshit!" POI 8877 spit out, his hand crashing down on the table, the metallic clink of his handcuffs echoing ominously. "This is nothing more than prejudiced kidnapping. There's no reliable way to confirm someone's Nahual heritage." "Our genetic test," Agent Oka defended, "has proven to be reliable." "A load of crap," POI 8877 seethed. "Gonzalo Guerrero, remember him?" "The Spanish trader?" Oka queried. "He became Achulel, a Nahual," POI 8877 asserted, a knowing glint in his eyes. "Didn't matter that his blood and genes were Spanish. He learnt our ways. Doesn't that demonstrate the worthlessness of your genetic tests?" "Do you have evidence to support this claim?" Oka pressed. "Clan Ba has preserved his history for generations. Your word alone, unfortunately, doesn't suffice as evidence." "Well," POI 8877 replied bitterly, "it seems you'd rather keep your corporate masters appeased." As the room fell silent, the years of pent-up frustration and feelings of powerlessness began to bubble within POI 8877, his thoughts lingering on his incarcerated brother. "Gerardo," he murmured, his voice strained. "I need to see my brother." Watching the man across from him, Agent Oka felt a twinge of sympathy. Rising to his feet, he hesitated before opening the door. "I'm going for a drink. Do you want anything?" A stony silence answered him, the man's gaze unyielding. After what seemed like an eternity, POI 8877 muttered, "A Coca-Cola." Stepping out and shutting the door behind him, Oka replied grimly, "We only have Pepsi." In another part of the organization, researcher Ceballos grappled with the enigma of Nahuales. As she read through the Tzompantli site's archaeological records, she hypothesized a tantalizing theory. Perhaps the Nahuales experienced a sort of conservation, a regression to a primal state of being. It was an intriguing concept, but she quickly squashed the idea, deeming it unlikely. During their second interaction, the tension between POI 8877 and Oka was palpable. As he entered the room, Oka was met with a silent, imploring gaze. After an uncomfortable moment, he produced a photograph and a recorder from his suitcase. "Uriel, there's something urgent we need to discuss," Oka began, but was quickly interrupted. "Where is my brother?" Overcoming the knot in his throat, Oka replied, They won't allow direct communication. But..." He handed the photograph over. A tall, slim man smiled back from the picture. "This was taken yesterday. Look at the back. You'll find the date and his signature." The air hung heavy in the somber room, the tension as palpable as the scent of dust and late-night coffee. Agent Oka was carefully navigating the waters, his normally composed demeanor now laced with a certain tenderness. His hand moved cautiously, pressing the play button on the recorder placed between them. The room was plunged into stillness, the only sound being the recorded voice echoing within the barren walls. "Uriel?" A voice, unmistakably Abdiel's, distorted through the playback, strained with desperation and sorrow. "It's me, Abdiel," he uttered. His words fractured, revealing the emotional torment he was in. They won't let me say much, but I'm sorry for everything, for leaving and worrying the family, for what I said the last time. The recording descended into the sound of heart-wrenching sobs, the kind that seemed to echo within one's chest. You are trapped because of me, and I'm sorry. I love you all so much, and I miss you. I'm sorry. The effect on Uriel, or POI 8877, was immediate. His eyes welled up, tears coursing down his face unabashedly. Abdiel, I miss you too, pendejo, he murmured, his voice barely audible. The tender moment was brief, though, disrupted by the harsh reality of their situation. I'm sorry I can't do more. Agent Oka sympathized, his voice barely more than a whisper. Uriel glanced toward him, a begrudging gratitude gleaming in his eyes. I understand. I know you are not the boss here, Oka. I've been harsh with you, but thanks for letting me hear him. Can I reply to him? Uriel asked. Of course, but there is something I need to discuss with you first. This elicited Uriel's attention. I'm listening. I must warn you before. You aren't going to like this, Oka mentioned cautiously. Uriel steeled himself and responded. Just shoot it. Agent Oka exhaled. I need your help to set up a meeting between Clan Ba and the Foundation. The immediate reaction was scornful disbelief. What? Leave them out of this! Uriel's tone was irate now, his composed facade fracturing. We have been trying to convince them to peacefully move to a ZBS. They have so far been uncooperative, Oka explained, his tone as calm as ever. Uriel's fury was unleashed. He roared, slamming his handcuffs against the table. Of course they are! Why should they walk willingly into your cage? Agent Oka was unyielding. Because if they don't, Sin Nombre will get them. The cartel is desperate to get new muscle. You know the deal. Plata o plomo. I doubt they'll accept the money, but then they'll get the lead. Uriel's defiance was fiery, relentless. We have never been afraid of narcos. I didn't want to show you this now, please. I need you to try your best to remain calm, Oka requested, painstakingly retrieving a picture from his suitcase. Uriel scrutinized the image, a chilling scene of horror captured in print. A ghastly corpse, signs of horrific torture apparent, was handcuffed to a chair, its fingers gruesomely shoved down its throat. A St. Benedict medal dangled from its neck, and a hateful message scrawled at its feet. That is, it can't be, Uriel murmured, his eyes wide. We have confirmed the identity of the victim. Rafael Bapech, your cousin, Oka confirmed, his voice barely more than a whisper. The world seemed to shatter around Uriel. His entire persona collapsed, replaced with uncontrollable rage. He roared, his fist connecting with the table repeatedly until it dented, blood seeping from his handcuffed wrists. But he ignored the pain, his mind only filled with thoughts of revenge. Do you think you can take on Sin Nombre on your own? Oka questioned, his tone taunting and decisively calm. Uriel was livid, yelling promises of revenge in his native tongue. Oka continued, his voice growing firm. If you go to war with the cartel, you'll still be in defiance of Disposition 337. Kalmakak will eventually get involved, and with them, the Ravens. You'll be fighting a war on two fronts. Do you really think you can survive in the long run? Uriel, though seething with anger, was silenced momentarily. There are things more important than just surviving, Gerardo. Oka slammed his hand on the table, mirroring Uriel's previous action. Bullshit! Not everyone in your family is a warrior willing to die in a blaze of vengeance. What about the children? The elderly? Do they matter to you? Are their lives less important than your rage and your pride? This was followed by a pregnant pause, Uriel deep in thought, Oka's words sinking in. Uriel, I know it's hard, but I want to help you and your family, Agent Oka finally said, his voice soft again. It was perhaps this final plea, coupled with a dawning realization, that allowed Uriel to agree to mediate the negotiations between Clan Ba and the Foundation. Addendum J, excerpt from Pentagram Statement at GGCD meeting. General Pete Wilson reflected upon the events coldly. Only a truly perverted race could have brought this abomination upon themselves. His words rang ominously within the room, a chilling reminder of the horrors that humanity was capable of. The creeping disease had begun its relentless encroachment across the nation's borders, carried by invisible hands that held no respect for the principles upon which this great nation was founded: strength, God, and freedom. The proud citizens of the nation were left grappling with an uncomfortable truth. Was their future being purloined from right under their noses? In the wake of the escalating crisis, the government had issued Executive Order 14157. This order, steeped in a sense of urgency and severity, had designated all paracriminal drug syndicates sprouting like poisonous mushrooms in Mexico as abnormal foreign terrorist organizations. This entailed the syndicates being painted with glaring crosshairs, making them potential targets of direct military action. Against this tumultuous backdrop, the containment or neutralization of SCP-8360 instances a confounding anomaly employed by these malignant cartels, had been catapulted to the top of the priority list. General Pete Wilson, a man who was as steadfast as he was stern, had made his stance abundantly clear. We do not negotiate with terrorists. In the midst of the chaos, whispers of hard containment resources like beryllium bronze losing their effectiveness had started to circulate. These claimed ineffectualities, though yet unconfirmed, had set the air pulsating with tension. For the time being, the previous protocols were to be the guiding light until fresh guidelines were thrust into the spotlight. Researcher Sabalos, an unflinching pillar in the whirlwind, reassured his superiors. Despite the unsettling disturbances, he asserted that their goal of weaponizing their findings remained unhampered. If anything, the spontaneous manifestation had only accelerated their data gathering, an irony he likened to a form of divine providence. The promise of deliverance by Zatz, the Mayan bat god, was on the horizon. His words echoed with the promise of a night hunted by bats once again. However, the 8th of November, 2025, was etched in the annals of history as a day of infamy. ZBS-12, a containment facility perched ominously near the contentious US-Mexico border, had been breached. The containment protocols, meticulously followed and revered, had offered no protection. SCP-8360 instances, their fury fueled by their newfound freedom, had easily overpowered the unsuspecting security forces. Yet the grasping hands of SCP-8360 instances did not reach far. They were corralled by the quick and strategic response of the MTF reinforcements. For 13 agonizing days, the siege on ZBS-12 persisted, until the hand of Pentagram descended from the sky. Following the directives of Executive Order 14157, a drone strike eviscerated the beleaguered ZBS-12. The aftermath was a graveyard of the SCP-8360 instances, their ambitions ground to dust. Emboldened by their divine mandate, General Wilson echoed the sentiments of a nation. Just like the divine retribution that laid waste to Sodom and Gomorrah, they too would rain down punishment upon the foes of the United States. In the aftermath of the ZBS-12 incident, the aura of lingering danger hung heavily in the room where Agent Oka and PO-8877 Uriel engaged in a tense dialogue. Uriel, his heart weighed down by his concern for his family, demanded answers. Agent Oka, bearing the burden of the truth, attempted to impress upon Uriel the severity of their predicament. As Uriel paced the room, his movements mirroring the chaotic thoughts swirling in his head, Oka attempted to reason. They were all in peril, and time was of the essence. Unless they unraveled the knot they found themselves in, their fates were perilously uncertain. The clock was ticking. The future hung in the balance. Your cooperation is imperative. I hope you understand the gravity of the situation, the agent's voice echoed in the stark, sterile interrogation room. The subject of his questioning, a man with the designation POI-8877, his eyes gleamed with a strange light, an ironic smirk touching his lips. Is that so, Agent Oka? Do enlighten me, he retorted with a faux sense of enthusiasm, a mask of merriment over his strained patience. I am here to further your cause, after all, am I not? Oka swallowed hard, his eyes narrowing. We'll cut straight to the chase. Our safeguards, be it beryllium bronze, magic charms, or even the damn San Benito, they're losing efficacy, he confessed, his voice echoing the direness of the situation. You mentioned something about seals. Were you referring to our failing measures? The man, Uriel by name, sighed, his eyes flashing with a hint of regret. I attempted to caution you, Gerardo, he lamented, his words filled with a bitter irony. You chose not to heed my warning. His breath hitched, a grimace of discomfort etched on his face. The void, the endless nothing, it reeks of despair. You're oblivious to it, aren't you? Oka blinked, taken aback. I'm having trouble understanding. Uriel sighed, his voice dropping to a hauntingly soft whisper. Must I recite the tale again? Once upon a time, a war waged in the heavens. Some of our forefathers pledged allegiance to the moon, others to the sun. The side we chose was irrelevant. Our fury and bloodlust was such that it struck fear even in the hearts of gods. They trembled at the beast that we became. Oka remained silent, his mind struggling to keep up with the cryptic narrative. Uriel, however, continued to speak, his voice brimming with nostalgia. The retelling of this tale around the bonfires of my youth with my grandfather and brother, Abdiel, it was always a highlight for us. Uriel's gaze turned wistful. My grandfather didn't just tell the stories, he made them come alive. His skill at hand-shadow puppetry was unparalleled. I wish I could show you, but... His hands, bound by handcuffs, lifted as a sarcastic note to his voice. Oka frowned, the bizarre turn of the conversation unsettling him. Uriel, our situation is not one for reminiscence. Ignoring the agent's discomfort, Uriel continued. The tale always took a dark turn when the sun dismembered the moon. The blood that dripped from her torn body was used to script our names. Names to tether us to our humanity, to bind us to rules of gods and men. The hope was that a war of that magnitude would never be repeated. Oka opened his mouth to question Uriel further, but the man was already lost in his tale. Despite the moon eventually finding peace with her sacrifice, a fragment of her still harbored all the hatred, all the bloodlust. A fragment that has grown over eons, a void that hungers for our names. Uriel's voice dropped to a chilling whisper. It offers freedom in return. Freedom to act as we please, to take as we desire. The price is our very humanity. A price I once deemed too steep, but who am I to judge? Oka shook his head, his mind reeling with the implications of Uriel's words. Uriel's laughter cut him off. You'll soon understand. His eyes glowed with a dark, unsettling humor. I can hear her voice. She's whispering to me, showing me visions of my family's agony. I felt their pain, and I knew it was true. My clan. It's no longer. Oka's eyes widened in horror. That can't be true. He reached for his phone, his fingers trembling as he dialed numbers. I'll get someone to confirm this, Uriel continued as if he hadn't spoken, his voice chillingly calm. Was Abdil ever alive? Did you dig him from the mass grave or did the ravens finish him off? Oka's phone buzzed, signifying loss of signal. He stared at it in confusion as Uriel's words sank in. I saw Abdil. He was alive. Suddenly Uriel's head dropped, his face concealed from the view of the surveillance camera. His voice became a low growl. Just as she could never forgive the earth, her mother with the serpent skirt, and his brother Hummingbird, the sun, I shall never forgive you. He lifted his head, his eyes now pitch black. We just wanted to be left alone. But you saw us as tools, as weapons. If that's what you expect from us, then that's what you shall get from us. With a swift move, Uriel stood up, his body slowly enlarging, dark fur sprouting from his skin. The camera feed started to blur as if being corrupted by an unseen force. Oka dropped his phone, his eyes wide in terror. Uriel! He screamed, but it was too late. The transformation was complete. Her cry echoed through the clinical chambers. Stop! She barked, her fingers slamming down on the button nestled beneath the metallic tabletop. Electrical currents sparked to life, coursing through the shock collar secured around the neck of the creature seated before her, known by the codename POI 8877. Yet the beast remained unfazed, its eyes aglow with a supernatural fire that outshone even the luminescent glare of the collar. That name is no longer mine! The creature's words clawed through the sterile silence, its voice seething with an ancient fury. I have traded it for broken chains. Now I call upon the moon's true name. Before her eyes, POI 8877 defied the laws of the natural world, its form morphing and contorting into something monstrous, a Nahual. The visual feed glitched sporadically, the electronic hiccup morphing into visions of ancient glyphs that danced across the screen. The handcuffs, once a sturdy restraint, groaned under the force of the transformation, metallic links straining and splintering. In the face of this horrifying spectacle, Agent Oka's hand instinctively shot to his holster. Metal sang against leather as he withdrew his pistol, his resolve unwavering. His finger squeezed the trigger, the noise obliterating the eerie silence. Yet the beast remained unharmed.
Luna Negra, Charo Negro, Black Moon, POI 8877 bellowed, its monstrous voice shaking the very foundations of the chamber. Those are nothing but masks!
The creature's metamorphosis reached its chilling climax. The metallic remnants of the handcuffs clattered to the floor, a pitiful testament to their futile resistance. POI 8877, now a terrifying amalgamation of man and beast, seized Agent Oka, hoisting him into the air with an effortless ease. POI 8877 drew in a deep breath, its lungs filling with the sterile air before releasing it in a thunderous exhalation. Finally, can you smell it? It rumbled, its voice rumbling like distant thunder. The stench of the void is no more. At the top of this world there is only Koyol Shauki. An ominous silence fell upon the room, broken by the monstrous crunch of bone and sinew. Blood spilled from the jaws of the monstrous black jaguar, the lifeless body of Agent Oka tumbling to the ground. The camera feed glitched once more, returning to reveal the beast had vanished, leaving behind only the haunting echo of its wrath. In the wake of the unforgettable incident, the higher powers scrambled in the aftermath. POI 8877's method of escape remained shrouded in mystery, but the creature's apprehension was of utmost importance. Security tightened at the remaining ZBS, guarding against potential chaos, but the threat of further breaches loomed ominously over their heads. A chilling image was reconstructed from the glitching glyphs, the spectral imprint of POI 8877's grand escape, and an ominous message was delivered from Pentagram to Kalmakak. Control your beasts or face hellfire, your choice. The words echoed through the chambers, a chilling reminder of the power they were dealing with. And so, the tale of the empty man, Alito, began. A tale that would be carved into the annals of the SCP, a chilling echo of when the beast broke loose, a warning to all who dared tread where the monstrous roamed. Anticipation bubbled. The next chapter in this chilling narrative was set to unfold, and the world could only wait in bated breath for what the darkness would reveal. And thus, the tale was credited, a story spun from the mind of Killer Pollo, forever etched into the annals of the SCP archives under the designation of SCP-8360. The details, the images, the haunting tale, all found their place beneath the overarching narrative, offering haunting glimpses into the monstrous world of the beast that escaped. From the glyphs to the moon, from the stone to the mask, every element was recorded, each detail meticulously sourced, forever preserved in this chilling cautionary tale.